Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, who all have joined to this session on fluid discussion servers. My name is Lokesh Balasubramaniam, and I'm the managing director for PeopleSoft HR and Technology at SPRMC. I'll be running the presentation today. And for this session, I have a couple of monitors here set up, and I have content to share from a couple of monitors here. So I'll be looking away from the camera for a while, depending upon whether I'm on a slide deck or on the application. So please bear with me. With that said, it's only a 30-minute session, so I will take any questions that you have during the session at the end of the session. So there is a Q&A tab on the right-hand section of the application. So if there are any questions that you have throughout the session, feel free to enter it in the Q&A section, and I will review it periodically and finally at the end of the session as well. With that said, let's get started with the session. Just give me a second. All right. Before we get started, a little bit of overview around who we are. We at SPRMC are an Oracle Platinum partner, and we pretty much entirely focus on PeopleSoft applications and our PeopleSoft customers. And we provide a huge range of services that are focused on keeping the PeopleSoft application current and modern, so that you and our customers get best value out of your investment in the application. Specifically in this conference, the virtual Reconnect conference, we have around 7 sessions on various topics on the latest features that are available in PeopleSoft that can be deployed. So in addition to this session, please do check out the other items as well. With that overview, I'll get started with the topic of the discussion today, which is the fluid discussion service. Now, the fluid discussion service itself for this presentation, I have broken down into two parts. One is I want to initially give an overview and talk about the use cases of where to use this functionality and how to use this functionality. And then for the most part of the session, I want to focus on showing the scenarios that I have set up in the system and also walk you through the process of how to go and set it up in your system as well. So that's going to be the agenda for the session today. So first of all, the fluid discussion service, consider it as a plugin, like you can easily enable on any fluid page in your system and use it to provide a conversational capability to any transaction that you perform in the system. So there is a screenshot in here that I have shared on the right-hand side. You notice the user is on the My Team style on the HR application, and I have enabled the fluid discussion service on the right-hand side that shows under the related information section. And the user can use this style to initiate a conversation with any other user in the system. So it provides a conversational capability to any transaction in the system. So it's a plugin that is added using the related content framework to any particular page that you want to use it in the system. And the deployment of it itself is fairly simple, and it has been around since 855, 856 tools onwards. However, the adoption of the service has been pretty low, primarily for the reason that the use cases of the service is not very clearly defined. So that's what I want to talk about next. But to know more about specifically the exact details about the service, I have also linked here the People book. So if you are downloading the presentation, there is a link to the People books here as well. In this session, I'm going to talk about 3 different use cases. So the 3 different ways how you can make use of this discussion service to enable or increase more collaboration of your users within the PeopleSoft application. So for example, let's start with the use case number 1, which is you can use it as an interaction tool between any user in the system and the administrator. What I mean by that is, going back to the previous example that I had in the screenshot, a manager is accessing his team information and they have some questions about how to do something. So obviously they can email the admin HR team outside the system, or call your HR help desk. The other option is to set up this functionality, the fluid discussion service, on that My Team tile, so that they can right away there ask a question to the HR team, and the HR team can respond via the same medium, same channel, so that the user gets updated about with an answer about the question they asked for. So it provides like a two-way communication channel between your users and your administrators. That would be a simple, straightforward use case. The second use case would be setting up the service in a way that it is becomes a collaboration tool amongst the users in your system. So let's say for this example, I'm going to show about setting up the service in the company directory, assuming that the company directory is typically accessed by all the employees and managers in the system. And if user wants to post any questions or comments about the company directory functionality, that everyone else can see as well. So it's like a public forum, like a chat forum, that's to be enabled on the company directory. So it enables collaboration amongst the users on that particular functionality of company directory. So it's not a two-way communication, it's like one to many, like everyone has access to it, sort of a communication. And the third option is sort of a hybrid. Instead of a two-way communication or open to all, the third option is a hybrid where you enable this functionality for a small group of users who are doing a specific functionality. In this case, let's say employees and managers as part of their talent activities, talent management activities, as part of their person profile or performance module. We basically enable this functionality so that employees can ask questions to their managers can respond using the same tool. So the communication stays within their team, it's not shared outside. So these are the three broad use cases. You can take this and expand and apply to any transaction in the system, not just the HR system. It could be finance, supply chain, ELM, any PeopleSoft application. You can use the same concept. The idea is you either have a two-way communication or open to all sort of a communication, open to a large group, or a specific focus group communication focused to a specific group. I'll show you all the three different items that I've set up for this scenarios, and also talk about how to go about setting this up as well. So for that portion of it, I'm switching to the online demo portion. So just give me 1 second. I'll also quickly check if there are any specific questions so far. I don't see anything, so that's all good. Excellent. Sure. For this portion of it where I want to show how the service can be used, I'm going to log into a PeopleSoft demo environment. This demo environment is specifically HCM PUM image 32 running tools 857. The same functionality is available on 856 and 858 as well, so it really doesn't matter which particular tools version. Once you're above 855 and are using fluid user interface, this functionality can be enabled. So with that said, let me just give 1 second. So I've logged in as a user who's a manager, like Rosanna Channing, and I'm already on the manager self-service, and I'm going to the My Team tab. So the same screenshot I had earlier shared in the presentation, that's the page that I'm in, the My Team style. And within My Team style, you can see here, I have enabled the fluid discussion service on the right-hand side that says team actions ask HR. This description, you can set it up whatever that is meaningful to you. In this case, let's say I'm specifically focusing on providing a service as a question answer medium for managers to interact with your HR team. So that's why I've named it as Team Action Ask HR. So click on this button, it opens up the conversational window that I was talking about. So there are already a couple of conversations I have earlier set up and had. So for example, there was a question that I raised earlier as a manager, why my personal information is shown on this page, like a personal phone number. And let's say there are no comments so far. The HR hasn't come back and answered this item. So that's fine. Let me leave it as is. Instead of closing it, I should have gone back. The second question I have asked is, my team's compensation data is not adjusted according to their FTE. So there is a compensation window on my team page. So I'm asking a question, why it is not showing me the compensation that is adjusted to a particular person's FTE. It's showing as if they are a full-time person. So for this one, let's say Rosanna Channing asked that question. I, as an administrator, went into the system and provided an explanation saying the compensation data is not broken down. System is set to display the compensation amount for one FTE, regardless of the resource being a full-time or a part-time. So that's, let's say, that's where the system is designed to do. So that is the response in here. So these are some past conversation I have already had. Let me say I want to initiate a new one. I'll just quickly show you how to do that. So as a manager, I come in here and I want to start a new conversation. So let me say the question would be, how do I promote a team member? Let's say manager has question about that. Of course, it's not only as a very basic question like this one, but let's say um, so I'm specifically looking for the manager, specifically looking for what are the prerequisites to promote a team member. And the status is open. This important aspect I want to show here is the participants. So when a manager is conversing through this discussion servers, who are the participants of this service? Let me correct this mistakes. So for this particular page, I have set up the participants as the user themselves who is creating it. They will always be a participant because they are the ones initiating the conversation. In addition to that, I have set up a discussion group that says HR help desk team. So the participants of this service are the user who is initiating it and the HR help desk team. No other user will be able to see this conversation if they go to the My Team page on their access. So, for example, there is another manager. If they go into their My Team, they will still see the window that says Ask HR. The tile will be available on the right hand side, but they won't be able to see the conversations that another manager is having with the HR. It's limited to individual manager and the HR team. That's how I have specifically set up this particular conversation, discussion service. Let's say I, as a manager, am asking this question, but I also want to share this information with a peer of mine. So there is another manager who would benefit from this. So I can choose what other manager or what other user should this information be shared with. It could be a group of people or it could be an individual user. Let's say in this case, I know another user. So Ethiopian, who's another demo user. So this is another manager. I want to share this information. Then I, as a manager, as an initiator of this conversation, can add additional people on an ad hoc basis. That is also possible. But they will always only be able to be added as a participant, not an administrator. They will be able to see and contribute to the conversation. They won't be able to change the conversation, like the subject of the conversation, or remove the conversation, things like that. They wouldn't have administrative privileges on this particular item. So that's a manager accessing and doing it. So now you can see here that question has been added. If there is any other comment I want to post on that after I have submitted it, I can do that. If I want to attach any documents, I can go ahead and attach any document as well. So let's say this has come through. So as a manager, I have done my part. I have asked a question. I have submitted it to the HR. Now, let me go to the same application as a HR user. And I go into the same tile where that service is provided. Let's say now I'm a HR administrator and I go into the same tile where that information is provided. I can see here, now I'm an administrator, HR administrator. So I see various conversations, not just from this manager, it could be from any manager. Anything related to the team related questions are going to come through my window here. And I see this item, how do I promote a team member, which was a question that was asked by one of the managers. So let's say I have a manual and say, please, so the response would be, please check the attached manual and provide an attachment document that would say, that would go to the manager. So So basically, it's a Q&A we just did to answer that question, right? There was a question that the employee had or a manager had, and I, as an administrator, was able to go in and provide that information. So I basically go in, complete that activity, and close that window. Looks like I did not submit it. Just give me 1 second. Looks like I did, but it's not recording that one. Let's check that back. Make sure my information is saved. Yeah, my information is saved. It wasn't recording that particular activity. So as you can see here, there are a couple of comments. I have attached a document and I have attached, provided an instruction to say, please review this document. Now going to the other window, let me go back. And as a manager, go back into the service. I have asked this question. You can see there it said there are two unread. It would have gone by now. It said 2 as a number here. That was 200 conversation. Now I have the question here that has been answered by the admin here. And I could say, thank you very much, and close this conversation. Right. Very much, submit it, and close this. So if there are any additional attachments, I can view it here. I can view the details of the conversation and say closed. This has been answered. So no further, when a person who is the initiator or an administrator closes a transaction, no further updates can happen to this one. So that task is done. Now, that's a basic flow of how a conversation is initiated and addressed and how multiple people collaborate in the system. Obviously, this can be also done like a manager could have sent an email to the HR and had that done in the outside the system. But this provides more contextual. They are able to do it right away in the system, specific to the transactions they're asking. And more importantly, it is going to go to the right team that we have set up to address those questions instead of randomly sending it to any person they may know. They are basically sending it to who we have set up as the users to address those questions. So essentially provides a channel for administrators to answer these questions. So this is the first scenario I mentioned about. One of the use cases is to a two-way communication channel between a small group of users and administrators. I'll quickly divert and show the other two examples as well. But most part, I just want to do a quick time check. We are close to 20 minutes into the session. I want to switch and go to the setup portion of it, how to set it up. That's what the important part of the presentation itself. So the other item I mentioned about is more of an open collaboration forum for large users. So let me quickly go to the company directory link I have set up. And within the company directory, I have enabled the Fluid Discussion service. And in here, I have named that service as a community chat. So it's basically, it's not for asking a question to a particular administrator. It's basically posting some thoughts in a particular forum. That's sort of a model. So it's the same discussion service. And the activity you do here are exactly same, how to post, how to close a conversation, etc. But the difference here is the participants that are set up, in addition to the creator, the person who's initiating it, I have set it up, the discussion group, to be all employees. So anyone who has employee level access, who has access to the company directory functionality, will be able to participate in the conversation. So that's the difference in this use case compared to the one that I showed earlier. Again, I'm not going to be demoing each one of the scenarios because let's get quickly to the setup aspects of it. And the third scenario I mentioned here is, let's go to the self-service functionality and go to the talent profile. So let's say I, as an employee or a manager, in this case, I've gone into my employee self-service talent profile. I have various competencies and other items that I've added to this talent profile in here. This also has a discussion service in here. Now, this one, I have set it up in a way that it's a conversation between me and manager. In this case, it says managers, but though the access will be available for all managers, I have set it up in a way that only my manager will be able to access my conversation. There is a separate. This example is different to the two other items I showed earlier. So in the setup, I will show what the difference is. So when a manager comes into this profile and accesses any conversation, it is only going to show the conversation that is specific to this profile, which is Rosanna Channing's profile. So earlier we saw the my team discussion. In the my team discussion, there is no scope attached to it. The team is, I have my team and my question is specific to my team's functionality, but I'm not actually tagging it to the team itself. With company directory, it's an open access. It's open for all to access. With the profile functionality, this example, it's a conversation between an employee and a manager that is specifically tied to this person's profile. So I'll show you how to enable that as well. So there are the three different use cases I want to quickly highlight before we get to the setup activity. Now for the setup activity, what I will quickly do is I'll switch back to my presentation that would help us to quickly discuss what is the setup involved in here. So essentially there are 4 steps associated with setting up this fluid discussion service. The first, it starts with something called as discussion group, which is identifying who are going to be the participants of this service. So that's setting up the participant pool. So we saw a service that was open to one. The participants were the HR team. The second service, the participant were all employees, and the third is to define the discussion group. And the second step is to define the discussion type. Now, discussion type is basically a page where you take the group that you are setting up and you're associating with a particular service. So that's the association happens in the discussion type. And you then say what privileges each of the participant will have. Things like whether the participant will be able to attach a document or whether a participant will be able to close the conversation. All those privileges are provided in the discussion type setup. Then once you have set up a discussion type, you're basically going to associate that discussion to any fluid component in the system. So it has to be a fluid component because the whole service is based on fluid user interface. So you basically find which component in the system that you want to add it to and add that service to it. And before adding that, you can either use the delivered service or you can clone and create your own service to add it. So the third step is an optional step. Depending upon whether you want your own security, your own discussion types to be set up, then you will clone the delivered service and create a new service. But if it is a simple chat conversational UI that you want to enable, then it becomes you can use the delivered service itself. And final step is the one where you are mapping that service to a particular component. Let's quickly, we have another 5 minutes, so let's quickly go through and see and show you an example of how to do it. So for that, I'll switch back to my user ID in here. So all the items that I discussed so far, the entire fluid discussion service is part of the enterprise component functionality. So it is available for all the applications like HR, HCM, finance, etc. So, and there is a functionality in here. Let me just find that one. Discussion service. Under the discussion service, you have the couple of items that I mentioned about. First, defining the user group, and then defining the discussion type itself. Let me quickly show you how to do it. Before that, I'll show you what is the use case I'm trying to do. So the use case I'm now trying to do is, let's say, as part of the manager self-service, I have the open job style in here, which as a manager, when I go in, it is going to show me the jobs that are open on this particular page. So let's say I, as a manager, would have some questions that I want to address with my recruiters on some of the jobs that are open. So I provide a service. I want to provide a service called Ask Recruiter. It is showing up here because I had earlier tried this out before this session, but this is not currently active. So if I actually click it, it's not going to let me finally save it because I've deleted that. So let me leave this for now, and I'll show you how to set up one from scratch. So for the example that I just mentioned, we have the group that is going to be answering the question is recruiters, because the manager wants to ask question to the recruiter. So that's where I will start with. So let me quickly go in there and define the user group. So for a discussion, there are a few groups that are already I have set up. So let's say in this case, I just want to name my group recruiters. And all recruiters in the system. And the way the group is going to identify the people, you choose it here. Whether it is a role, it could be a recruiter role, and every user who is a recruiter might have that role. Or you can create a simple PeopleSoft query that will return operator IDs. Or you can write a complex rule that is more context based, that is using an app package and an application class. So for in this example, let's say I want to go with a role, and I know I want to use the delivered recruiting role. So let's say all users who have recruiter role will be default participants in that conversation, right? So that's what I'm trying to set up here. So it's as simple as that. I have now defined recruiters as a group. Next is the discussion type itself. Let's say I want to discuss, okay, add a new value. That's also recruiters and recruiters. Whether attachments are allowed. Let's say I want to allow that. Save that, and you would see that after I save it, there is a new tab that comes up for participants. So this page, the second page, roles, is where you are defining what are the privileges that different roles have in that conversation. For example, as a creator, am I allowed to close or reopen the conversation? Yes. Am I allowed to edit my subject? Yes. Am I allowed to add or remove participants? Let's say I don't want the creator to choose and include other participants, then I don't want to enable this flag. Then finally, administrator. And when we are going to add the administrator. So let's say an administrator should be able to close or reopen. Maybe the administrator should not be able to change the subject, but should be able to add or remove participants. When they are able to add or remove participant, can they assign a role to the participant? That's also possible. As a participant, let's say we don't give them any permissions like this, they will only be able to participate in the conversation. They can't change the subject, they can't close the discussion, etc. And finally, this is the page where I define who are the default participants. If I don't define the default participants, the creator needs to add everyone manually. They need to say who I'm conversing with. They need to add them into that list manually. But in this case, we have set up a group specifically called recruiters for this function. So I'm going to add recruiters as participants. I don't want to add them as administrators. Let's say they are going to be just participating and responding to the conversation. So this is the page discussion type where we are pretty much saying the recruiters are going to be added. Recruiters are going to be the administrative users. Recruiters are going to be provided with these privileges. And this is what they can do. Maybe this should be administrator. So we have done the first two steps. We have identified the group who will be participating in the conversation. We have identified the type of, we have defined the discussion type that controls what permissions they get. And the final step is, this now needs to be a new discussion service, which is getting added to the final page, which is the open jobs page. So what I will do here is quickly, I'm aware of the time limit here, just want to quickly show that functionality. There is a delivered fluid discussion service that is called UFD, default discussion. To create any new discussions, you basically have to clone this service. You don't have to do anything else apart from cloning this. So let's say UFD underscore recruiter. And name of the service is recruiter discussion. Ask recruiters. So that service has been copied. I can go back. Let me close this window. I will go back to the service I just copied, make sure it has all the elements that I want to have. And I will show you what I'm doing here. Just give me 1 second in here. All right, so this is what is needed here. Just give me 1 second. There is a mandatory field here that I need to copy. TSC and all right, so let me open another window. So the discussion service, I told you there are two options. Either use a delivered discussion service or create a new discussion service by copying it. The action I just did now is about copying the discussion service. And all that I did there was to clone that one, save it with a different name, went in and provided, made sure the content was available, and added a new ID here that is called discussion type. The purpose of that is I want to associate the discussion to the new discussion type I created, which is recruiter. That's to provide that link. That's the reason I have added this parameter. And the way to associate this service now with a particular component is just go to the related content component page, manage related content services, and look for that component. If the component is not there, you can add it as well. So open job is a tile that's already available there. And I come in here, and as I mentioned, I had earlier added this recruiter service. Obviously, I haven't deleted it. I can add this was a default service that I added, delivered default service. But now I have created a new service, and I need to find that one, the LB UFD recruiter, and make that, let's say, third in the sequence. Recruiters, and name it a little bit different. And in the configuration, the first two elements are system delivered, and that needs to be associated to connect that service to the component. So all that I'm saying is for the variable component, associate whatever is the system variable, and for the variable market, associate whatever is the system variable. The third one is the one that I manually added, which is the discussion type, and I want to make sure I choose the right discussion type recruiter. So I want to make sure the spelling of that is right. And I'm using the discussion that I created, recruiters. So I'll pick that up and use that and say it's going to be a model window and it's going to be public access. So I'll save that one. That's all is needed to associate a new discussion service to a component. Now, if I go to the open jobs, you see the earlier one I added, which is a default service. And in the default service, if you create a conversation, you can see the participants are going to be the help desk, HR help desk team, which was the one that I had set up earlier. But if I go to the new service that I just added, which is Ask Recruiters Only, then if I'm trying to add a conversation, it's going to show me the participants of recruiters, which is the new group I created. So already 5 minutes past the time now. So just to do a quick recap, let me go back to the slide deck in here. The discussion group identifies who are going to be the participants. Discussion type provides the participants with the privileges. You can create, clone a discussion, a delivered discussion service and create a new one and associate that with a component. With that, the one other scenario I wanted to discuss was regarding defining a scope with a talent profile, but I think we already run out of the time. So if you are interested in that one, please feel free to reach out to me as well outside of the session, and we can definitely have more detailed conversation. And finally, my contact details are as part of this presentation or as part of the Axel Events website. Feel free to reach out if you want to discuss anything more about any of those functionalities that we just covered. I think the overall demo of this feature would have been great if we had got like a 1 hour session, but sorry, I had to rush through to fit it in the time limit that we have. But overall, thank you very much. Really appreciate all of your time and joining the session, and hope you get to make use of this functionality that is available in the system. Thank you very much. Have a great conference. Bye.